that's right, the comedian. Yeah. All right, so how many people have heard this talk before? 1, 2, 3. What on? That's Irish for. All right, so anyways, I'm talking about John Devereux, Utica's preeminent entrepreneur, statesman, census taker. Premier Irishman. The name Devereux, isn't that French?
Yes.
Yes, thank you for playing. So where'd they come from? Well, many years ago, the Devereux family was from a town called Devereux in France. It's about the distance from here to Boston. That's how far it is from London, so it's pretty close. Anyways, in France, the word of is de, so Devereux means that family was from Devereux. They were there for many, many, many years as the Devereux. They were in nobility. They did pretty well. So how did he get from France to Utica? Well, first of all, they were fighters too. I'm not supposed to talk about Fight Club, but I'm going to here. That's part of the talk. So the Devereux brothers, Walter and William, fought with William the Conqueror in 1066, and as a result were awarded what's called a knight's fee. A knight's fee was not money, but enough land for a knight to live on and farm comfortably. So they got land in Wales. And Walter Devereux had 2 sons, Robert and Edward. Robert was, if you know anything about English history, he was the Earl of Essex, and he was one of Queen Elizabeth I's friends until she had him beheaded. That put a damper in the relationship. The Irish line descended from the other brother, Edward. And now, okay, so they're in Wales. Now, how did they come to Ireland? In 1169-ish, Dermot McMurrough, who was the deposed king of Leinster, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, he requested help from these fighters in Wales, and Richard Strongbow de Clare answered the call and brought with him some more Devereux fighters, knights. And so Sir Philip Devereux, as helping Dermot McMurrough regain his kingship, he was given land in Wexford. And they came to settle in near Enniscorthy in an estate they called the Lep. And that's where it is. I hope this is the same thing I'm looking at.
Yeah.
I could be shown. I could be showing the episode of Yellowstone. But
It's good too.
yeah, I know, I don't want to spoil it. I love Beth, though.
Yeah.
So for the next 20 or 30 generations, they kept marrying Irish women because that's where they were. And so it was said that they became more Irish than the Irish themselves. And that brings us to Thomas of the Lep. Thomas was John Devereux's father. So Thomas married Catherine Corish. Their oldest son was Walter, then James, possibly, then our Mr. Mayor John Corish Devereux, then Margaret, Mary, Thomas. Remember, they didn't have TV. They couldn't watch Yellowstone. Catherine, who became a nun, probably after looking at her mother. I just had to have that. Luke, Nicholas, and the 2 pictured are John and Nicholas. They're the ones. I'm going to be talking about John, but someone someday should talk about Nicholas. He's a remarkable guy too. Anyways, they all lived comfortably until 1798. Anyone know what happened in 1798? Pat, you were there. Do you remember?
Ran out of potatoes?
The Irish Rebellion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And briefly, the Irish Rebellion was based on what was happening in the French Rebellion, Catholics, Protestants, and Presbyterians were trying to get united under the United Irishmen to get Britain out of Ireland, to end British rule. They were led by Theopold Wolfe-Tone. You probably heard the name if you're into Irish history at all, and Henry Joy McCracken. And most of the fighting took place in Wexford, actually right around the left, right around the Devereux estates. Thomas Devereux and his sons supported the cause, and they had some minor victories around Wexford, and then they decided to do it once and for all at Vinegar Hill. It was not a good decision. There was about 20,000 Irish rebels, and the British only had 10,000, but the British had rifles and weapons, and the Irish had pikes, sticks with pointy. So they lost, and the French that were supposed to come and help never made it, so they were soundly routed. So how did this affect the Devereux family and ultimately history? They lost most of their land. The father, Thomas, was imprisoned, later pardoned, and then died either in prison or at home. The oldest brother, Walter, had a price on his head, but he escaped. He disguised himself as a sailor and went off to Martinique and was never heard from again. The brother, James, was killed. What about John? He wasn't the fighter that the other guys were. In fact, in 1796, he was in France learning how to play the fiddle and dance. He left before the rebellion, and he arrived in America around 1797, settled in Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, where he gave dance lessons. And Devereux, those are the two advertisements in the papers at the time. And it is said that he was quoted as saying he danced $1,000 out of the Yankees. That means he earned $1,000 by just dancing and teaching people how to dance.
Okay.
Yeah. Has nothing to do with the Yankees' horrible fifth inning.
It's the Yankees, I hate them.
Let it go, let it
I'm
go.
done. Too soon? Yeah. And then he parlayed that into something else. So then he came to Utica. With his earnings, the $1,000, which is worth about $24,000, he decided to set out on his own and open his own business. So he stopped in Albany for a while, worked at a store, grocery store, dry goods store, and I believe that's where he met his first wife too. I found that a lot. Yeah, that's the thing when someone's growing up and they don't know he's going to be famous someday, they don't really keep track of him all the way. So then they have to go back and. So, anyways, when he was done in Rome, Albany, he came up over to Rome and tried to rent a store from Dominic Lynch. It was called Lynchville then, not Rome. But Dominic Lynch's model was to rent, and Devereux wanted to buy. So he said, no, I'll just go to Utica. So he went back to Utica, got here in 1802. He set up a dry goods store, and there was only 90 houses and 200 people in Utica at the time in 1802. Everything was set up near the old Fort Schuyler, Mohawk River. That's where Utica was, essentially. And there was only 2 competing dry goods stores in the area. And dry goods at the time included whiskey, gin, wine, brandy, cigars. So he also serviced the taverns, and there, out of 200 people, there were many taverns. 90 homes and maybe 5 taverns. Anyways, Moses Bagg, one of the city's earliest historians, says, Devereux had energy, shrewdness, and industry, a temper most generous, a tongue that was persuasive and fluent, and manners benignant and polished. These brought him quick custom and ensured his success from the start. Man, I don't have to read these anymore. I don't want to put my glasses on. So I'll wait for you to read them. Anyways, that's where he set up, and It was in a perfect location because he was between New York and the West, and along the Mohawk River, and the stagecoach line, and a direct, albeit dirt road to Albany. So he would get imports from New York City and from overseas, and it would also be an assembly area to export to the West. So he did okay. And then eventually he brought his brothers, Thomas, Luke, and Nicholas over. They had built another store at Bag Square. And again, like I said, before long he amassed and lasted his competitors and was making $100,000 a year, which is about $1 million today. That's a lot of whiskey and cigars. From that, and the fact that 10 years later the War of 1812 was started and then over, so he and his brothers built another brick store on the west side of Bag Square, and then eventually it came to when the Erie Canal started coming in 1817. They bought a building right on the canal. That's pretty smart. In fact, I don't know if you can see it here, but follow my lead. You see right here? That's the ripples, the reflection of the Erie Canal. And there's the Devereux building right there. So there's the Hump Bridge. So that's the Devereux block right there.
Is that Utica in 1819?
No, that had to have been, because the Hump Bridge was here, so it had to have been later, probably later 1800s. And I'm thinking, you guys can maybe help here. One of these spires has to be St. Patrick's, right? This is probably St. John's or Grace Church or whatever.
Okay.
So one of these, I believe, has to be St. Patrick's, but I'm geographically
Challenge?
demented. Yeah, challenge. Demented is probably more accurate.
No.
Anyways, and that building stood until 1990. There was a fire and then it was demolished. I know, sad. Some quick family facts of what was happening while he was getting rich, or maybe because he was getting rich. He married Ellen Berry from Albany, and that's why I said I think that Thomas Berry is the one who owned the store where he worked, so I'm assuming that's where he met her. She died in 1813, and then he married Mary Rice Colt. She was from the Colt 45 family and had some money. And she outlasted him by 20 years, as most wives do. They had no children, but at times they adopted two. They adopted an Ellen, who I'm guessing was like Mary Rice Colt's niece-ish. I'm looking into that too. And John C. Devereux Jr., who was his brother Thomas's son. So they had no kids. So the John Devereux line stopped with him. I know, sad. All right, and where did he live? When he first arrived, he lived on Main Street. Then he moved to Whitesboro Street and Hotel Street. But in 1812, excuse me. Water. Did I pronounce that right? Water?
You need
I've never seen it.
I do. So he built his mansion on the corner of Broad Street and 2nd Street, and he lived there until 1848. It was later the site of the Lowry Brothers textile business, and his mansion was torn down in 1972, urban renewal, and is now the site of a parking lot at JM Door.
Oh.
Yeah, you see the boulder. You see the
Oh,
boulder
yeah.
out
Turned
front.
a lot of things into parking lot.
I know, right?
How sad.
Joni Mitchell said it best. It is sad. All right, so here's what you see now. It would be handy to know exactly where his home
Looks
was.
familiar.
Yeah, but it's a parking lot. You see that boulder though?
Yeah.
If only there was something that existed both in the old photos and the current photos. So here's a
It's the
picture.
boulder?
Yeah. Here's a picture from 1950, a photo.
I thought
Like a boulder.
Oh.
If we find the boulder in this photo and register it with the boulder in this recent photo,
Oh, wow.
Dedicated.
you are about to see Hollywood magic.
No, I've seen the folder, it's funny.
It's, yeah, it's still there. It's been there since 1932. And perform a little tech magic.
Ah, very good,
Thank
very
you,
good.
thank you, thank you.
Touche.
Okay. So now we can see that his home was actually in the parking lot, much closer to the boulder and the street than we've seen. That's pretty cool. I mean, and again, sad, torn down.
Is there a plaque on the folder?
There is.
Yes.
Let me gin up a quick slide. That means there's one coming up. He also did, here's where he started doing his contributions to the city. St. John's Church, Savings Bank of Utica, two pretty good institutions in the city, right?
Yeah,
Hey,
there it is.
there's a plaque on a boulder.
Ah,
So before 1819, before St. John's, there was no Catholic church west of Albany. And Devereux, being a man of means and a devout Catholic, would horse and buggy to Albany every Sunday to go to church at St. Mary's, where he was a trustee. Yeah,
Did
think
it
about
take
it.
him 5 hours to get there?
yeah.
I did the math. 90 miles, horse and buggy was like 6 miles an hour or something.
Oh, my God.
One has to hope
He
he's
was
in
devoted.
heaven. He was devoted.
Which is devout camper.
Yeah.
Whoa.
But eventually he tired of that, and so he convinced the St. Mary's priest to come to Utica and do what do you do? A mass? Perform?
Perform a mass.
Perform. I mean, I go all the time. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah, okay, right.
So in 1813, Paul McQuaid, I guess Father Paul McQuaid, came up here and gave a mass in Devereux's home. And in 1932, this plaque was placed, and the boulder was placed in front of his mansion to mark that occasion. But by 1819, there was enough Catholics in the area who didn't want to drive to Albany. So they formed a corporation called the First Catholic Church in the Western District of New York. It eventually named St. John's. Yeah, so in 1821, they built the first St. John's, and then another, and then another. And this illustration is one of the first instantiations of the building, and this was actually drawn by John Devereux's niece, Nicholas Devereux's daughter, Hannah. More on her later, too. And if you go today to St. John's, as I do all the time, you need to drink of water, too. These portraits are in the vestibule when you walk in. That's John and Devereux John and Nicholas left to right. And this little table, Father Servatius brought it down. This is the table that Father McQuaid said the first mass at Devereux's home.
Okay.
Yeah, we asked him if we could have it for the museum. I didn't know priests could talk like this, but apparently we can't. So,
They're
no,
human.
I'm joking. They are. This is a cool thing. So the Devereux being very good with money and having established himself, John Devereux established himself in 1802. By the time the laborers came, the wave of laborers came in 1817 to 1825 to work on the canal and the trains, they were making money. They didn't trust necessarily the other contractors on the canal or old soldiers coming home from the War of 1812. So they needed someone in whom to trust their money and trust their money. And the Devereux were that people. What? Huh? Is that you?
They.
Yeah, thanks. In one of the buildings, when they moved from 10 Bleecker Street to Genesee Street, they added a strong box, and so the laborers would give them their money to hold. The Devereux invested it, earned interest, paid all the interest back to the shareholders, and therefore, actually, they had I think I have a slide on this. By the way, the strongbox is still at the bank at the Gold Loan Bank, Savings Bank of Utica.
There it is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they applied for a charter, it was granted in 1821, but as the canal work was ending in 1825, they never really put it into effect. But although the bank kept going on, and then they, as money started coming up again, they did apply for another charter incorporation in 1839. So that was the start of the Savings Bank of Utica. John Devereux was the first president. Nicholas was on the board. If they had put the first one in effect in 1821, they would have been the first savings bank in America. Yeah, Philadelphia beat them out. So this man, what did he do? Well, all these things. Trustee of St. Mary's, yeah. First catch, I told you that one. He established the Utica Hibernian Benevolent Association in 1822. That was about in the middle of when the laborers were coming over to work on the canal. He had already been here for 20 years, so he had gone through the hurdles of being an immigrant and all that stuff. So this was to... Do you want to buy a vowel, sir?
Yes, Vanna.
Anyways, he formed this organization in 1822. They would pay $1 to join, and he would, if someone got sick, they would pay for it out of that. So it was kind of an insurance company and a way to help people assimilate their way into a new world. He started the first St. Patrick's Day Parade in 1824. Yay. So we celebrated that at the parade this year, the 200th anniversary. He founded the first Catholic cemetery in 1830 before they were buried in potter's fields and around churches. Someday there's going to be a talk on that too. Near Arlington Road, Addington. Where's Steuben and Elm? What's near there? Addington Place?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's where the cemetery was. And then when they put in Addington Place, they removed all the Irishman bodies, 600 of them, and then reinterred them at St. Agnes. And if you go there, there's a really nice monument there, an obelisk-like. They were mass. And, you know, not to disgust you, but think about that. They were in the chapel, the remains of 600 bodies, and people could come and claim, this is in 1903, so long after 1830. So families would come in and say, yeah, he was ours, we'll take him. Just think about the logistics. I know. So there should be a talk on that and a field trip to the cemetery. And other stuff. First elected mayor of Utica. In 1839 and up to 1839, they would, the Chamber of Commerce would appoint a mayor. There was a law in New York State starting in 1840 that all city mayors had to be elected by the people. So in March of 1840, he became the first mayor elected by the people, this immigrant who had only been here 30 years before that. That's pretty impressive.
It's quite a...
Yeah. But as they say, there's more, and that was a lot of what it is, including the Hibernian Temperance Society. Now relax, temperance isn't the same as abstinence. Temperance means just drink easy, yeah. Because there was 40 breweries in Utica at the time, and he being a businessman, yeah. And he was the president of Friendly Sons and just so much more. So later in his life, he had given up the business to Nicholas. He and his wife moved back to Paterson, New Jersey, to live with her mother. And during that, he also retired to his farm in Utica. And then at the end of his life, he returned to his home and died there in 1848 at age 74, with an estate of, well, the value today would be $17 million. But having no kids, he left it all to his wife's family too. So wives, Treat your husbands well. Or not. Or as they deserve, yeah. He was buried on the grounds of Sisters of Mercy behind St. Anne's Church, or St. John's Church, so more on that in a minute. And what a legacy he left. And apparently I'm not going to be able to read these without my glasses, so if you want to take a minute to read these. There won't be a quiz. I'll just summarize it. It is pretty cool stuff. He was very, very revered for, on the one end, his business shrewdness as a land speculator, and at the other end of his generosity and benevolence. So 1848, he died, and his name was fading in history. I mean, you've seen his name on stuff. The Ancient Order of Hibernians division here is named after him. The Devereux block, which is no longer here. The Devereux bar, which is no longer the Devereux bar. The band that's in front of the Devereux bar is no longer a band. So we wanted to do something to make sure his name never is forgotten. So we researched into how to get a historical blue marker put up at the site of his former mansion, right next to the boulder. Thought that'd be cool, because the boulder doesn't mention his name. It just mentions the first mass was here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we wanted to have the laying of the shamrocks ceremony as one of the Grand Marshal traditions during Grand Marshal Week in March. So very briefly, we got in touch with the Pomeroy Foundation, William Pomeroy Foundation. They're the ones who have, since the 1930s, have privately funded all the historical blue markers you see around the state. The state used to do it, but since the 30s, these guys do. And you have to provide, what do you call it, primary source documentation. So it's not enough to say, I read in the book that John Devereux was the first mayor. You had to find the original newspaper article, or the articles of incorporation for St. John's Church, or the Benevolent Society, or St. John's Asylum. So we did all that, and they liked it. They helped us with the wording. We wanted to say, loyal Irishman, loyal Catholic, friend to all. And they said, no, that's subjective. It's got to be fact-based. So anyways, they worked really hard with us, and so it was approved, but they said our trustees are not crazy about putting it in a location where there's no building there anymore. But our historian has checked, and did you know that in Utica, there's an Irish Cultural Center? So maybe you can put it there. Maybe you can talk to them. Yeah, okay. Anything to help. So we put together a ceremony up front. We were shooting for his 250th birthday, which was August 5th, 1774 he was born. So, and we did it. August 2nd, we had a ceremony out there. The sign is right below you out the window, front and back, it's enormous. And I know you drive by them on the streets, but you have no idea how big they are, or how heavy they are, or how deep the pole has to be dug by hand, by old people. And we had some dignitaries come in and some speeches. The couple, well, not the couple, the two people on the right, is it still on your right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks. Are Susan Devereux Kernan and Stephen Kernan. They are direct descendants of Nicholas Kernan's daughter, Hannah, who married Francis Kernan, the senator. So they were direct descendants, and they were able to come here. It's pretty cool. And then as far as the Shamrock ceremony, when I was Grand Marshal in 2022, he shamelessly plugged. I said, wouldn't it be cool, since he started the parade, since he always had the shamrock on his lapel, and he led it for 24 years, he was the Grand Marshal. I said, wouldn't it be cool to start a tradition where we lay shamrocks on his gravestone? It's a great idea, right? Where is his grave? All right, so he was buried on the grounds of the Sisters of Mercy at St. John. But no, is that irreverent? Don't tell me again, too soon?
No, not yet.
Thank you.
Old.
He was supposed to have been, he had reserved a corner in the cemetery that he donated land for, but instead he was buried at the grounds of Sisters of Charity. Then he was reinterred to St. Agnes. He was a trustee at St. Agnes that had been established in around 1845-ish. Piece of cake. Just go to St. Agnes and find him. No. Those are all John C. Devereux.
Oh.
Yeah. So which side is ours? How are we doing on time, by the way?
Which one is his?
It's 10 minutes to 12.
Okay, thank you. All right, which one is his? You're literally on the edge of your chair.
I'm gonna say the.
I should take bets.
Yeah, she could make extra money.
Yeah. All right, so first of all, the players. JCD1 is the mayor. By the way, that sign over there came from the Devereux when it was John Devereux's Tavern.
Okay.
I hear it was. JCD2 would be the nephew he adopted, his brother Thomas's son. JCD3 is Nicholas's son, who we also named John Corish Devereux. 4 is an infant son of, it'd be Nicholas's grandson, the infant son of John C. Devereux, 3, and so on. It turns out there's a lot of John C. Devereux, and this one isn't in the Devereux Corish line, so Corish line. So he doesn't count. But by process of elimination and the dates that are on the gravestones, I ultimately determined that this beautiful one, which is by the chapel, was for Nicholas's son, John C. Devereux, and he did some really cool things in Utica too. Started Sadaquata Golf Course and, a lot of other stuff. Another one,
Yes, child.
that's an infant one,
Oh,
yeah.
it's infant too, okay.
And the nephew that he adopted, he's probably buried in Buffalo, I believe. So I concluded that this one here, at the end of that
Oh,
row,
my goodness.
is our John C. Devereux. So in that row is Nicholas, all right, from the right is the cross that I think is John Devereux. The next one over is Nicholas Devereux. The next one over is his wife. Good Lord, what's her name? I just forgot it. And then their daughter Cornelia.
And this is at
That's
St.
not good.
It's a St. Agnes, right? They're all at St. Agnes?
Yeah. Yes. Did I kill this somehow?
No, there you
Ouch,
go.
there you go.
You're back.
We're back.
Excuse me, pardon me.
You guys not white beard?
No comment. So, Nicholas did have a son, John C. Devereux, so you might say, well, maybe that's his son, John. But that was that nice gravestone we saw first, and he died in 1884. So Nicholas died in 1855. John died in 1854, so even the timing is like an afterthought. An 1848 death or reinterment would have been outside of 1855. And it's consistent with the size and shape of, it's no bigger than that would be on a church grounds. And it also seems like something our John Devereux would have done. It was modest and not garish. A big mausoleum or whatever. So, this is where we decided that's where the Shamrock ceremony would take place during Parade Week. It was pretty dirty. They were all pretty dirty and in disrepair, the sin of it. So, Harp Museum volunteers and AOH volunteers and Pat McGrath, we got together and cleaned it all up nicely. This is the way it looked. This is the way it looks now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
tough stone to work with to keep it.
I know. Pat McGrath, he does this, and I guess he does it for other people too. So if you, this is serious now, if you do need his services, give him a call. He's an awesome guy. All right, so what's next? We've finished our first two projects, so we get to rest, right? No. What I would like to do is commission, what our museum committee would like to do is commission new oil paintings for John Devereux and Nicholas Devereux to be displayed here. It used to be, if you went to the Savings Bank of Utica, there was two beautiful oil paintings of John and Nicholas Devereux, the founders of the bank. When the banks were bought out and then bought out and then bought out, the paintings found their way into the basement. So Pat and I got together with several of the leaders, district, regional, state, whatever. And they were very open to letting us go through and take them, borrow them, whatever. And but they found out they were donated to the United County History Center. Well, we're good friends with the United County History Center, so we went there, assuming they might let us borrow them. But from there, they went to the Munson Williams, I'm sorry, I'm always going to call it Munson Williams, where they're stored in their basement. So we said, we have to get them done ourselves. And there's a local artist who we really like, Steve Fletcher. He's agreed to do them. We are trying to get a small grant to do them. And so the question is, which portrait to choose? Now remember, he lived from 1774 to 1848. Photographs weren't a thing. He wasn't really famous enough to have a Gilbert Stuart painting or whatever. But he did have 5 portraits that appear to have been copied from a previous iteration, right? So, I'm going to go from newest back to oldest, because we want to. I could have him paint the one on the right, and he could do it perfectly, but I don't think that's ultimately what John Devereux looked like. So, as long as we're starting from scratch, which one do we choose? So, this is the one that was hanging up at the Savings Bank of Utica. It's in the basement of Munson Williams. Thank you. And so it was painted, I'm guessing, around sometime in the 20th century, in 1920 or so. I could find that out, but I haven't yet. The next one, this is the one that's in the vestibule of St. John's. And again, I'm not sure when it was done. It just occurred to me yesterday that that's a different photo than the ones I thought I had. Every time I was doing this slide, I thought there was 3 photos. Then wait, this is different. And newspapers of the day had their own illustrators. They couldn't, they couldn't import a JPEG from another, from their archives. So they had their illustrators. It would be very close to what these are. I saw one in a 1899 Utica Observer yesterday that looked just a little bit different than these. But so there was a few of them. But again, if these were copied from previous ones, who was around to do the original? Or did they do it from memory after he died? This one, all right, that's different, right? You see him?
Yes.
Okay.
I like
This is one of the more famous ones that's seen. This is done by an illustrator named Elsie Mundy, who had a studio in Utica for many, many years. Started with illustrations, ended up with photography, and if you go on a lot of auction sites, you'll see postcards that he did, or what they call trading cards, or trade cards. They weren't like baseball cards, but they were like advertisements for businesses. You can see his name, Mundy, signed in the bottom left. This one I like. This one, but so read this. This is from a copy belonging to John Devereux Kernan III, made from a photograph of a reproduction of the original that was destroyed in a fire in 1934. So this is a reproduction of the original. So if this was a reproduction of that, doesn't it stand to reason that the latter one, the one that was done during his lifetime, has to be the most accurate? Well, in our minds, yes. So that's what we're going to ask Fletch to paint. Adding the color as they did, here. And I even played at home with some overlays and transparency by putting two of the portraits over each other to see exactly what was different. It was usually like the position of an eyebrow or something, or the turn of a lip. It's pretty cool. Again, Hollywood magic, you guys wouldn't understand. So, that's my story. Well, that's his story. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. Nothing?
Wait, why do you have to contract to have a whole new portrait done? When one's sitting in the basement
They don't want it.
of Munson Williams?
Well,
Give it up.
But it's sitting in the basement.
it is. I would love to try
It's in a
that.
basement.
I would love to try that, but two things. I don't think they're very good. And I've publicly gone on Facebook and said, I hate you for changing the name back to Munson.
Oh, that could be the reason.
I may have
Oh.
done myself.
You might have, yeah, you
So
might
it's
have
your
irritated
fault.
him a lot.
Well, it's all my fault.
Can't you have someone else ask?
Pat, you must know someone. Yeah, he looks away. I would like to try that. I actually would like to try it. It's a sin.
It's a sin.
I don't know how long it's not been seen in public, but it'd be fun just to go in the archives to see.
They don't have a real recognition of what the museum actually is, the people that run it now, because there is an actual history in the sub-basement written by Abigail Diamond. I know for a fact, because I've read it. I worked there.
Okay.
I was Bill Murray's private assistant and assistant treasurer. And those, changing that name, quite frankly, the Proctors donated more than the Munsons.
Absolutely.
Oh, they did.
Oh, I know.
The Williams donated more than the Munsons. The only people that are left are the Munsons. That's why we got the Munsons.
I know.
And the Diamonds also contributed $1 million towards that museum.
Yeah.
That nobody knows about because they were modest.
Yeah, I vote that neither you or I should ask for the paintings.
Oh, I'll go with you.
Let's wear our black masks and slide
I know
under
exactly
lasers.
where they are in the
Yeah.
sub-basement.
No, you make a good point. And for those of you who don't know, the new director, anyone want to join my team of not being allowed? The new director paid money to a firm in St. Louis to come up with a new brand thing for Munson Williams Proctor Institute, which was too long to say.
That was ridiculous.
They came up with the name Munson. That's what they actually charged Utica money to. It's almost like paying a guy to come up with a commercial, a song, a ditty for Hot Pockets. Yeah, you got your 8.2 million. What'd you come up with? Hot Pockets. It's grand robbery, I tell you.
Oh,
Yeah.
Lord.
Yeah, I hear you though. It is an insult. As is tearing all the buildings down that they did, Yes,
Are they storing that portrait properly as far as what you're supposed to do?
That-
You won't know unless you go into the
yeah,
sub-basement.
that I would hope they would, because the directors knew, but the curator and archivist are not. You don't do this stuff unless you have a love for it, believe me. Believe me. Anything else?
How come Nicholas doesn't get any love compared to
He
John?
does, oh man, I'll tell you what. As much as John did, and it was a lot, Nicholas probably did more. He gave the land, he owned 400,000 acres in western New York. He gave the land and money to start St. Bonaventure College. He opened a priest college in Rome, Italy. He paid for the printing of a special version of the Bible, which he read 17 times, cover to cover. He was He started St. John's, he started the savings bank. He started the steam mill, the gold mills down the street, railroad companies. He was an amazing, amazing guy. In fact, Devereux Street, where the Devereux is? That wasn't named for John Devereux, that was named for Nicholas Devereux. His mansion was where the state office building was. In fact, when he died, he was interred at St. Agnes. You've seen his grave, very simple. A hearse, the people wouldn't allow a hearse to take him from his home at the state office building, Chancellor Square, wherever. They carried him. 600 men carried him in turn. They carried the coffin by hand to St. Agnes. Oh yeah, he's a really special, special guy. And so his daughter Hannah, he also had 10 kids too. Well, all right, credit where credit is due. Mary Dolber Butler Devereux had 10 kids. And their oldest, Hannah, is the one who married Francis Kernan. If you go around the corner here, you'll see a board on John and Nicholas Devereux. And then there's the newest one we put in there was on Francis Kernan. So the Kernans that are around today came from them. And we've had a few in Whitesboro, like right near Sataquata. The Kernans still live there. And Devereux Lane is up by St. Anne's Church. In fact, Leslie Devereux, generations later, owned all the property where St. Anne's Church is in the Devereux Estates. So we're going to keep this name going. But yeah, it definitely need a Nicholas Devereux talk. Yes, sir.
Is that the same current for the school?
The what?
Current schools, are named after.
I would have to guess so. I don't know for sure because I haven't done research on him yet, but I would have to guess so.
I'm sure it is.
I'm sure it is too, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, we had a presentation here a few months ago. Joan Klossner from a volunteer at the United County History Center. She did a talk on how Utica streets got their name. It's just amazing.
They're all people that live
Yeah, well, even where the United County History Center is now, it's on Avery Place. Hannah Devereux's family was the Averys, so it's just everywhere. Cornelia, I mean, there's just
here. Extra child.
and all the names, Morris Miller, Brinkerhoff,
Yeah, that's on.
Yeah.
and there's a Bleecker,
That's like Cornell.
yeah, Rutger Bleecker, okay? Schoolcraft, William Sherman, I meing, they're everywhere. Any other questions, or do we want to go have lunch and some darker water?
Okay.
Not white beer, huh?
No, they did that, they tried that one, Zima,
Did
right?
they really?
Yeah. Yeah, that will never have a historical blue marker. All right, thank you very much.
Good for you.